All right. Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome to this exclusive VUX World webinar in partnership with Core AI. My name is Kane Sims. I'm your host for today, and I have alongside me, I have Raj Koneru, the CEO of Core AI, Prasanna Arikala, who's the CTO of Core AI, and Nick Orlando, the Director of Product Marketing for Core AI. And today's webinar is going to be absolutely epic. No doubt you have heard of ChatGPT. No doubt you've probably experimented a lot with ChatGPT. No doubt you've seen the headlines around ChatGPT, and the underlying technology behind ChatGPT is what we're going to be discussing today, and how you and your business can use it to really impact your intelligent automation and your transformation strategies. It is going to be an absolutely epic webinar today, and thank you very much for joining me through it. Chaps, how are we all doing today? Are we all feeling good?
Yeah, fantastic.
Fantastic. It's a very timely topic, this. Welcome everyone who's joining. Thank you for joining. We've got quite a few people here now. We're going to kick off perhaps with a poll, if you don't mind. So for those of you that are joining on LinkedIn, unfortunately you won't see this poll, but you can definitely stick a comment in the chat there and vote on it. For those that are joining us on Zoom, you can join this poll. There's 3 questions, and we just want to get a sense check. We want to just read the room a little bit and just get a bit of a feeling for your kind of experience levels and your knowledge levels around large language models in particular before we get into this session. So I'm going to launch this poll right now. 3 questions. I don't know why I'm sticking up. Oh, that is 3. Yeah, there you go. 3 questions, which is the first question: what is your current level of understanding of large language models? Have you never heard of them? Have you heard of them but don't really understand them? Are you familiar with large language models and you've got a mild understanding? Are you pretty knowledgeable about the topic? Are you an expert on large language models? Stick your votes, and if you're on LinkedIn live watching us now, then you can stick your comments there. The second question is, what's your current level of experience in using large language models? Do you have no experience at all? Have you played around a little bit with the front end of these things like ChatGPT? Have you played around with large language model APIs to get a feel for it? Are you currently building something using a large language model into your product or service? Or have you experience in using large language models for a production product or service that's live in the public domain right now? Third question is, what brings you here? Say hello. What brings you here? Are you just interested in large language models and generative AI? Are you hoping to generate some ideas for a potential business application? Do you have an idea, but you're not really sure how to execute that idea? Do you have a project coming up that might require large language models, or it may be beneficial to use them? Or are you actively working on something that requires large language models? 3 brief questions there just to get a vibe for those that are attending, your current levels of experience and knowledge. And as I said, if you're on LinkedIn, drop us a comment and let us know your experience levels and your degree of knowledge, just so we can understand where we're pitching this content. While you do that, while you're voting on that, Raj, tell us a little bit about why the world is going mad right now about large language models. You're on mute there, Raj. Sorry.
The whole concept of large language models is based on, the ability for these models to understand pretty accurately what a person may be intending to say. So the NLP part of it is highly improved with the amount of training data that has been used to build these models, as well as the ability to generate appropriate answers to questions. But a large language model is primarily a request response model. So you give it a set of information, it understands it and produces a response. It's not necessarily a dialogue model. So large language models in the context of conversational AI are useful to do certain tasks that would have otherwise taken, creation of data and training of different blank slate models, but since they don't maintain the dialogue with context and execute a dialogue, you've got to be able to use them appropriately to get the best out of them. So they're useful in that regard. So as you look forward from a business point of view, when customers want to or enterprises want to transform the experience that they put out to their customers or to their employees, or other types of partners. Those experiences involve executing an entire dialogue, whether it's just answering a question, producing some information through an inquiry, or executing a transaction. So LLMs are very useful, I believe, both in the design time, during the creation time of a dialogue, as well as, partially to some extent at the runtime. You need to be able to control them effectively so that they don't hallucinate and come up with out-of-band responses that make no sense. So the usage of them is very critical, and that's what we've done here.
Nice. And we're going to get into both of those examples, LLMs being used at design time and LLMs being used at runtime or experience time, which we'll get into in just one moment. We've got results of the polls here, people's familiarity with large language models. Half of the attendees here have said that they are familiar with large language models and have a mild understanding, which I think is really good. I think that's probably largely, or not necessarily, so I'm making a bit of a generalization here, but it's definitely been on the top of people's minds and on the tip of people's tongues since November when ChatGPT was launched by OpenAI. As you know, Prasanna, Nick, and Raj, Core AI and a few others have been exploring large language models for a number of years, because since 2020, when ChatGPT was, GPT-3 rather, was launched, it started to appear in a whole bunch of different products and services. And, some of the early adopters have been using these kind of large language models for a number of different tasks, but it really was the kind of launch of ChatGPT which seems to have just captured everyone's imagination and got everyone's bosses kind of tapping them on the shoulder like, hey, what are we doing about this ChatGPT stuff? And so definitely excited to see what Core AI have been doing. And over the course of this webinar, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, we're going to be looking actually at some of the product. We're going to see some of the demonstrations here that Raj and his team have built into the platform. And we're going to be discussing how large language models are really going to help your intelligent automation and your transformation initiatives. In terms of people's current level of experience, we've got 62% of people are at the experience level where they've played around with ChatGPT, but not necessarily got their hands dirty and rolled the sleeves up in terms of accessing the APIs and trying to build products with them. So I think that this session is going to be really, really good for you, because if you've experienced the front end and you kind of know kind of what your experience is like on the front end, today we're going to show you a little bit behind the curtain. We're going to show you a little bit about how you can use those large language models to create bespoke applications for your customers and your users, which is going to be fantastic. And then the third question is, what brings you here? Most people are either just interested and they want to learn a little bit more about large language models, and there's a good group of people there who are hoping to generate some ideas for a business application that they may be able to work on in future. So Prasanna, I'm sure that we're going to hear a lot of inspiration during the course of this session. I wonder whether you can kick us off by maybe shining a little bit of light on one of the areas that Raj was talking about there, which is the use of large language models at design time. First of all, what do we mean when we talk about design time?
So like Raj talked about, the design time is when the bot developers would go and, design the conversations, identify the tasks, and have the conversation flow for those tasks, the dialogue tasks, and provide the training for that. And also once the, training is set up, to be able to go create test cases for it, to be able to go and validate the bot, whether it's kind of performing to that expectations or not. So all those tasks, and also during the bot development itself, in the dialogue, the kind of messages and the prompts that the bot developer provides to give a right experience to the user, that's also part of the design time thing. So we as part of our bot builder, we brought in generative AI and LLM technology to kind of improve that whole experience by 10x.
Nice, perfect. Definitely. So should we dive into it? Should we take a look? Maybe before we just dive into that, it might be worth kind of explaining. I don't know exactly people's kind of level of experience as far as chatbot building and stuff like that is concerned, but perhaps it might be worth just briefly, as Nick maybe fires up that kind of introductory slide to the design time stuff. Maybe Raj, you can give us a very quick whistle-stop tour in terms of, let's say there's somebody out there who isn't a bot builder, isn't a conversation designer, and they want to learn how to do this kind of stuff. Maybe there's a very quick overview of what Core AI does kind of from a high level, first of all, might be useful just to tee this up.
Yeah, I mean, from core AI, we've been in conversational AI for about 9 years. So we provide a platform, what we call our experience optimization platform, which enables anybody to design, build, train, test, deploy, manage, measure a virtual assistant or a bot, and deploy that in both voice channels and digital channels. We support over 35 channels overall. So when you think about the full life cycle of an application like this, a conversational application, the first thing that you start with is, okay, what does the application do? And usually product managers or domain specialists, come up with, these are the things that, the application ought to be able to do, or the bot should be able to engage with users on. And then you go about designing the conversation. And once you design it, then you figure out how to get the bot to understand the users, no matter how they may say something, and then execute a dialogue, in sequence or out of sequence, depending on how the user is engaging, and complete a transaction or produce some data or answer a question. And then when you go through all that, you want to test it, for the edge cases. There are the straight paths, there's the alternate paths that a dialogue may go through, because it's an open-ended dialogue. So the platform that we provide gives you the tooling and then underlying engines to be able to understand the users and execute the dialogue, integrate to backend data, and be able to complete that entire experience, essentially. So we've now taken LLMs into each of those lifecycle elements to make it easier for people to build that bot from a design time perspective. And that's what we're going to start showing now. And then we'll talk about the runtime experience as well following that.
Perfect. Perfect. Let's do it. There's a question here from Kumar. I would encourage anyone who is listening and watching either on LinkedIn or on Zoom, do use the Q&A feature. We've got some really cool features and demos to show you, which is coming up right now. But after that, we're going to try and get into some questions. So any questions that you've got regarding large language models, regarding these features that you're just about to see, stick them in the Q&A there, and we'll do our very best to get to them towards the back end of this session. So sorry, Nick, over to you. Let's get into this concept that Prasanna was alluding to there, which is around large language models and how they can be used at the design time during a project. Can we kind of elaborate on what we mean by that and how they can benefit designers and creators?
Yeah, so we're now going to show how we are using LLMs and generative AI in powering this whole bot development lifecycle process that Raj talked about, starting with defining the use cases for the bot. In that, the LLMs can suggest use cases, so you don't have to think comprehensively about a bot. So give the purpose of the bot, and then we kind of suggest the use cases for it. So you can then go and use those. Similarly, for a given use case, we can actually generate the complete flow, and within the bot builder within our platform, you can actually see the entire flow automatically generated for that use case, including the branching of the flow and so on. So we also suggest training addresses to train the bot, and then once you have that, you're obviously going to test the bot. So for that part of the bot builder, we are using generative AI to suggest NLU test cases, which is basically given an utterance, whether the right intent is identified or entities are extracted and things like that. That's the NLU test case. And also conversation test cases, wherein a flow of the test case, like between the user and the bot, what would be the flow? So that also various different scenarios, we kind of use generative AI to suggest the test cases, and that will help create a comprehensive test suite. So also, part of this, we'll have ability for the bot developer to kind of define prompts and messages to provide a better customer experience.
Nice, awesome. Nice. And can we see that? Can we see this? Can we see this in action, Nick?
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so we're going to start with all of the design time use cases here. And the first thing that we can see is that we need to create a new virtual assistant. So in this case, we're going to be doing a banking virtual assistant. So we're going to call it Acme Bank and provide the purpose for this bot, right? So we're going to do retail banking in this example. And then we proceed forward. And what we can see is automatically a couple of use cases are already suggested using LLMs. So based on the description, we can click Get Use Cases, and it will provide more use cases that we can add to the virtual assistant. So based on this, we can then, go forward, pick what we want to be in the bot. We can remove some of the use cases if it doesn't make sense for us to use those. And then we can go forward and create the virtual assistant. So as that's happening on the back end, all of these are being created as dialogue tasks. Before we have, in all of these, you can see right now are in draft mode, right? So the next step is that we need to configure our OpenAI integration so that we can continue using LLMs throughout the design phase. So we go to our advanced NLU settings. We see that we have an OpenAI integration as well as an Azure integration. And now we're going to configure the OpenAI integration. What we need to do is really just provide the API key, and then we can enable the different features that we have using LLMs. So we've configured it. Now we enable it for things like automatic dialogue generation, training data, test cases, all of the things that Prasanna was just mentioning a couple minutes ago. Now we're going to go back to our dialogue tasks, and we're going to move forward with a transfer funds use case. And we're going to start generating what that dialogue looks like. So based on that description, we click the generate button, and a sample dialogue is created between a user and a virtual assistant. So this is a very simple example of how you can create a simple conversation between user and virtual assistant, but maybe we want to do something a little bit more complex. So now we're going to add a lot more detail to that description and regenerate that conversational flow. So we're going to regenerate right now, and now we can see a much more comprehensive and complex transfer conversation where we're providing the source account and the target account, the amount, the type of transfer, the date for the transfer, all of this information in order to build out that dialogue flow. And then we click generate dialogue task, and on the back end, the entire flow is created, including all of the entities that are needed and all of the entity types. So we see it's a number, a currency. Here we even see that it's a list of different items for an instant transfer or a scheduled transfer. Going back, we can also see that the API call to initiate that transfer has also been defined. And then we also define the body of that payload that's going to be sent over to the bank to initiate that transfer. That's awesome. This is automatically being created. Then we can confirm we have that confirmation step, but all of this flow is being created automatically through the use of our LLMs, right? And now the next step that we're going to go forward into, one sec. Now we need to generate some training data so that we can train the transfer use case. So on the right-hand side, we can auto-generate data to train the machine learning model on. And what we can see here is that there are some very simple use cases like move funds from one account to another, but there's also many more complex transfer training data that you can actually include all of the different entities. You can generate more use cases, put that over into the training data so that we can then train the machine learning model, and the virtual assistant will now be knowledgeable about transfers and understand how to talk about transfers. So now let's jump over to the batch test, right? So here we're going to create an entire test suite of data that we can now test the NLU on to make sure that the virtual assistant understands about transfers. So we're going to add this data manually. But when we create this, we see the generate test case button, which we click. We're able to generate test cases on any of the dialogue tasks. We're going to choose transferring funds for this one. You can even include spelling mistakes, entity checks, a whole host of different settings, and you're automatically going to have these test cases created. You can also generate additional test cases so that you can have as robust of a test suite as you want. You can remove any of the test cases that you don't want to include, and then you add all of these to the test suite, which can then be run against the NLU that we have just trained so that we can see how well the NLU is working, how good the virtual assistant can actually understand what we're trying to ask it for. So we can run through that. And now I'm going to actually jump over to a conversation test. So within conversation testing, this is essentially what my experience would be to make a transfer with my bank account. So we can see here that the virtual assistant asks how they can help. And now I'm going to say that I want to make a payment. And what we're going to do is we see the auto-suggested responses that the LLM is actually generating. So I can just walk through the conversation like this. It's going to generate these responses in different variations of how we could speak to the virtual assistant. I can also just talk to it, myself. I can type to it just like I could with a normal virtual assistant, and I can give it all of the information in order to make that transfer. Awesome. So now I'm going to turn it back over to you, Kane and Prasanna. That's all that we have for the design time features.
Nice. Thank you so much, Nick. That is really, really impressive. And I think what I like about that is how, I mean, you could ask an LLM to kind of give you an idea for what a conversation might look like and have it say, okay, first of all, the user says this, then it says that. And that for me was kind of like a fairly obvious place to start. However, what I think is really cool about what you've just shown there is that you're taking that, creating the conversation, but it's not just creating the dialogue nodes. Crucially, what it's doing is in the core AI system is it's actually creating, here's the space here where you need to call the API. Here's an actual function that we're going to run here. So you're taking the dialogue, developing more of an understanding about what needs to happen in the conversation, and then actually firing up the function behind the scenes that's the placeholder for that to happen. Because a lot of what, the limitations of large language models is that they do just kind of understand and then produce, and without having context about the conversation, they're a little bit limited. And I think what's cool there is just an observation is how you've kind of blended together the structure that the LLM provides, but then fused it with your core platform kind of capabilities to then basically give everybody a jump start on creation, which is great. I don't know, Prasanna, if you've got any other thoughts on what Nick's just shown there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think in just that design time, so we have fine-tuned the model to understand not just the conversation flow, but also how core platform expects the conversation to be branching, like you said, even have API calls and logic that needs to be added and all. So that's like almost like a fully functioning dialogue that gets generated. So we will now, kind of, now that we have seen how design time features have been improved with LLMs. Now let's look at how we're going to get benefit on the bot performance at runtime. So what we have done is we've added 2 new intent recognition models. One is a zero-shot model, which is powered by OpenAI. And we added another intent recognition model, few-shot model, we call it, which is powered by open source LLM that we have custom fine-tuned it. And the few-shot model, it gives you a similar accuracy to that of the zero-shot model, but it also adds you the capability to kind of have a control on what the outcomes are, so that it actually can give you ability to add training and all that. So it gives you more control when you use that model. And we'll also, part of the runtime experience, we will also demonstrate how a bot can be made to handle human-like conversations with the help of LLMs. We'll show how easily we can train the bot to handle digressions in a conversation, which is when the user moves away from the main flow, how we can bring them back and handle those alternate scenarios and how we can bring them back to the main conversation. We can also have the corrections when users make corrections to the inputs that they have previously given in the conversation. They want to make corrections somewhere down the flow, how we can easily handle that. And also kind of collect complex entities, composite entities, not like dates or numbers or something like that, but much more complex entities with relationships between them. For example, let's say a pizza order can contain multiple pizzas with the different pizza bases, toppings, different sizes, and so on, and each of them kind of related to that, right? So collecting that kind of information in a flow can get really complicated. So LLMs can kind of help extract those kind of entities much better with no training, because LLMs have been previously sort of trained with a lot of world knowledge. It helps that to kind of understand the sentences and extract it better. So we'll also show how we can leverage LLMs to generate a more dynamic and empathetic response to users' request. So based on user context within the conversation, how we can generate a response that is empathetic. And also sort of demonstrate how we can actually augment the whole conversation with data from an enterprise API at runtime. So it's not like just asking the LLM to generate something, rather we have orchestrated, we have created an orchestration engine wherein it can actually plug in enterprise data, enterprise knowledge, and enterprise business rules. So while you have this robustness, wherein, you say, because LLMs are pre-trained, by having conversations take help from LLM, we can actually handle various different unseen scenarios easily. That's the robustness part of it. While we have the robustness, we'll also keep the conversations very coherent, because that's very, very important in an enterprise scenario, to control the behavior, to be able to conform to enterprise data and business rules. Nick, let's get started on.
All right, sounds good. So we're going to start off with the zero-shot and few-shot model. And what we're going to do in order to enable this is go into our thresholds and configuration and make sure that our zero-shot model with OpenAI is configured to be the model. So now we're going to go back into our training where it has all of our dialogue tasks, and we see that there is no training data added to any of these dialogue tasks. But we can still test it out with that zero-shot model. So we're going to say, I forgot my PIN, and then we see that the zero-shot model is correctly able to identify that intent. Now we're going to try a little bit different utterance this time, and I received an alert about a transaction that I have not done, where it's an incorrect charge on the credit card. So this is wonderful from a zero-shot perspective that we're able to accurately identify this. Next, we're going to show some of the limitations with the zero-shot model. So here we have, I paid my Wi-Fi dues yesterday. Did it go through? And we see that it actually comes up with 3 different potential intents. It shows pay bill due, account transaction statement, and funds transfer status. So the zero-shot model is great at identifying an intent, but it's not really able to do that disambiguation or understand the context exactly of what a user is potentially saying. So this is one of the limitations that's remedied by our few-shot model, and we'll see that shortly. And then one other example where it's a limitation on the zero-shot model is I made an incorrect payment, but what we see here is incorrect charges on your credit card, not I made an incorrect payment. So it actually identified incorrectly, it had a false positive for that intent. So now we're actually going to move forward into the few-shot model and show you how we can remedy those situations. So we're going to go back over to our thresholds and configuration, configure the few-shot model, and now we're going to go back into training, show you we still have no training on any of these dialogue tasks, and we're going to go back into the utterance testing, and we'll redo all of the things we just did. So it's able to correctly understand I forgot my PIN as a reset. It's able to understand the incorrect charges on my credit card. But one thing that's different with the few-shot model is we have this confidence score or threshold for identifying a probable or definitive match. So this is very important for the next example. We're going to go back to the paying our Wi-Fi bill and asking if it went through. So with this, because we have those confidence scores in the thresholds, it only is going to suggest a matched intent if it has a certain threshold. So it does. The other 2 examples with zero-shot that it identified don't come up here because it didn't have a confidence score high enough. So we are able to only go forward with the most likely example that the user is talking about. And now we'll also go through that false positive example. So here we see that it actually doesn't identify the intent correctly. So that's okay. It didn't have a high enough confidence score, but what we can do is add this example to our few-shot model, in which the few-shot model, when you add a couple of examples, you're fine-tuning it and really able to direct what it's understanding. So we save that. Now we rerun the utterance, and we can see that it's able to correctly identify cancel funds transfer as the appropriate intent. So I want to pause there before we jump forward into the dynamic conversation. Is there anything else that you want to touch on, Kane, Prasanna, Yeah.
I think what's worth highlighting there for people who either if you're experienced at creating conversational AI assistants, or if you're kind of just looking at this technology for some of the first time, is that one of the biggest challenges that businesses have is in getting data that is required to train and underpin these models. And, you've got chat data, you've got call center data, but not everyone has a live chat. It's sometimes in a department where you can't access the data, or it's wrapped up in data security or whatever it might be. Your phone calls coming through your contact center might all be in audio recordings. You might have the technology to transcribe and utilize them and clean up the PII data and stuff like that. Data and getting hold of data generally for businesses is a very tricky subject and very hard indeed, which can prevent and block a lot of these automation efforts. And I think what's the real value of these zero shot and few shot models is that you're enabling brands basically and companies to create assistance without needing to go and identify and get hold of and process swathes of data, which is always a challenge. So I think it's fantastic. There's a couple of comments here. We've got Avinash saying that basically in the design example you're showing there, we're saving time in almost all possible scenarios: development, building up use cases, creation of data, testing, rebuilding and deploying. It's impressive, which I concur with as well. There's a couple of questions here regarding what's going on in the back end and licensing and stuff like that. I think we'll save those till the end because I know we've got a few more demos to show. So maybe we should go into the next one, which is very near and dear to my heart, given that my predominant background is around the voice side of things. And often voice interfaces are quite tricky to do because you need to have really low latency, and large language models, depending on what you get them to do, can potentially, although they are fast, it's different level of speed required when you put it into a voice scenario. So I'm definitely keen to see what we've got coming up here with this voice demo.
Absolutely, Kane. And I also want to call out how excited I am about this use case that we're showing here. It's pizza ordering. So it's very near and dear to a lot of people's hearts, in my opinion, because I know that I love my pizza. And this is a hard scientific problem to solve because pizza ordering can be very, very tricky. So I'm going to be quiet and just show you guys what we have built out.
Welcome to Pizza. How can I help you today?
Hi, I would like to place an order for 3 pizzas.
I'm glad to help you with that. Great choice. 3 pizzas coming right up. What size of pizzas would you like to order?
I have 4 guests coming over tonight. What size would you recommend?
Sure thing. 3 medium pizzas would be perfect for 4 people. Would you like to go with thin crust, thick crust, or cheese crust base?
Not sure. What did I order last time?
Let me check that for you. I see that your last order on 3rd of March was for 2 small thin crust pizzas with red onions, bell peppers, and black olives. Would you like to go with thin crust again?
Yeah, for 2 of them. And for the 3rd one, I would like a large pizza with cheese crust, please.
Perfect. So that's 2 medium thin crust pizzas and 1 large cheese crust pizza. What toppings would you like on your pizzas?
Let's add all the toppings from my last order and also add mushrooms to one of the medium pizzas.
I've got it. Just to let you know, we only allow up to 3 toppings for medium pizzas. Shall I add mushrooms to the large pizza instead?
Yeah, that works for me.
Great. So your order will be 2 medium thin crust pizzas with red onions, bell peppers, and black olives, and 1 large cheese crust pizza with red onions, bell peppers, black olives, and mushrooms. Would you like to confirm your order?
Can you repeat that, please?
Absolutely. You've ordered 2 medium-sized thin crust pizzas topped with red onions, bell peppers, and black olives, as well as 1 large cheese crust pizza with red onions, bell peppers, black olives, and mushrooms. Does that sound right?
Yeah, that's right.
All right. I just need a few more details to process your order. Can you please confirm the delivery address for me? Is it 353 Crown Street?
Yeah, that's correct. Also, my doorbell is not working. Can you please leave the pizza at the door?
Sure thing. I'll make a note of that for the delivery agent. And finally, will this order be billed against your Amex card ending with 4365?
Yeah, that's right.
Great. I have all the information I need to process your order. Please hold on a moment while I place the order for you. All right, your order has been successfully placed and will be delivered in the next 40 minutes. Thank you for choosing Tony's Pizza. Is there anything else I can help you with today?
That is, sorry, we'll bring that back. We can bring that back up in a minute to show the back end. But I just wanted to make a quick comment after that demo, because we've got a lot of reactions coming through here, a lot of love hearts and celebration emojis and all that kind of stuff, which is really great, because one of the things that, if anyone's created these applications before, especially on the voice side, what's very difficult on the voice side is it's straightforward enough to build and design a conversation that goes to plan. But as anyone who's worked at these systems knows, that not all conversations go to plan. In fact, most conversations don't go to plan, because that's not how conversations work. And typically when you're creating these systems, and it's even more important with voice because it's real time, it's immediate, it's ephemeral. Once something's gone, it's gone. It doesn't come back again. So really crafting that experience that caters for all the twists and turns in a conversation is a real challenge. And I think what was really great demonstrated there is that you were going back in the conversation to correct an order, you were going forward or sideways rather to ask a question, and you were kind of managing all of that context without damaging the conversation, which I think normally that stuff is an absolute nightmare to do. It's very challenging. So definitely kudos to getting that working on the voice channel. There's a few questions here related to the voice, but I know that there was a part 2 to that video, which is looking at the back end. I don't know if you want to kind of briefly get into that kind of latter part, and then we can discuss it.
Yeah, that sounds good. I'll turn it over to you, Prasanna.
Yeah, so here you can actually see like 3 different entities that we have added for order details collection, address collection, and delivery confirmation. So we've introduced a new entity type called dynamic entity, which kind of handles those digressions. You can see you can collect different types of entities here. And then one of the key things is you can actually add business rules while collecting that, so that's why it actually keeps the grounded, the bot grounded to not hallucinate, but grounded to the business rules, and kind of orchestrated. And then also exit criteria, which will help you, like while this dynamic conversation is happening, you can exit out of it. And also while rephrasing it, we give more control in terms of how many user inputs that we can use to manage the context, and also how the response should be, whether it should be empathetic and service agent kind of response, things like that. So you can actually give that personality here as well.
Brilliant. Very good. And what I like about that there as well is that the business rules are just in plain language. Just don't let them order more than 15 pizzas or whatever it might be, and actually explain it. So presumably there's an LLM on the back end of them business rules, which is interpreting what's being said and then creating the logic off the back of it. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. So we actually train the LLM with both positive and negative examples based on the business rules, so that it gets fine-tuned for that use case, and then kind of executes that conversation. And we'll also, as part of the engine, we actually control when to give it to LLM and when to pull it back and execute it within the conversation engine, so that it actually be grounded to enterprise data. For example, one of the scenario there was about the last order. So the last order, LLM can hallucinate saying, your last order had 10 pizzas or whatever, right? So we actually take control of that, make an API call, pull the data in, populate that context for it, and then use that information for LLM to just only handle the dynamic nature of the conversation.
Nice. That's very good. We have got a bunch of questions here, and we'll do our very best to get to these questions. But I know we've got 3 more features that we want to show, and so let's crack on with the next one, which is all around knowledge management. Am I right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is a very interesting one, because This is a completely intentless model wherein you could just upload unstructured documents and structured knowledge sources, and the bot starts answering questions without you having to add any intents or training for that. So that was the previous experience, right, where you would add intents and add training to it and all. So this is a completely intentless model. And it can actually even answer questions from different parts of the document, because we are using now a combination of LLMs, open source and OpenAI. We can actually even compose a response from different parts of the same document, or even different pages of two different documents. So we can even compose that response. And also one of the cool things that we have is to be able to answer from not just text, but also tables and images and charts like that.
Awesome.
Nice.
All right, let's get into it here. So in this example, we've actually, on the back end, our knowledge base is, it's a repository of different financial analyst reports where you can inquire about, stock prices, stock ratings, different things like that. So the first thing that we're going to do is ask about the stock rating for Microsoft. So you send that through, and then it comes back that it's a hold, but it also shows where we got that information from. So we can thumbs up or thumbs down, but then we can actually look into the source of that information, and it pulls up the document, and we see right away that they have a hold rating on Microsoft. So it's pulling this up directly from that document. And then in this next example that we're going to move forward to in just a moment, we're going to actually see how the context works. So I'm saying, what about Salesforce? But I'm not reiterating what is the stock rating, but it still retains that context and provides the answer for Salesforce, which is absolutely amazing. And you can pull up the Salesforce document, just like we did with the Microsoft document, see where that information is coming from, and then we can see that it's a buy rating. So going back over to it, now we're going to see how you can actually answer from multiple different documents, which this is baffling to me the first time I saw it. So we're going to ask about the COVID-19 impact on these companies. Notice we don't even re-specify Microsoft or Salesforce, and we're able to see not only the information, but the sources from where it came from. So we see this summarized answer from multiple different documents, and it's all concisely, succinctly said. So now we can jump in and actually look at where in the document did I find that information. So for Salesforce, it immediately takes us to the 7th page. So not only can it understand that, take those 2 paragraphs, 3 paragraphs and summarize it, but it's also able to show you exactly where in the document you can find this information. The same thing can be said for Microsoft. So we can go into the Microsoft document, and we see that we're taken to the 6th page, and we see all of the information about the COVID-19 impact. Obviously, it's a lot more than what was presented back to the user. So we provide a summary using the LLM to provide a succinct response to whatever that user's question was. Awesome. So the next thing, we're going to talk about Microsoft's pre-tax margin. Who is the closest to Microsoft? And basically what this is, when we go into the document, we're going to find out that this information came from a table. It didn't just come from paragraphs of text, so automatically takes us to the 10th page where this table is, and we can see that Facebook has the next highest margin relative to Microsoft. So you're able to grab that information from a table and still present it in a conversational way back to the user. Awesome. And then this next one, it just awesome, absolutely awesome, because not only do you have the ability to summarize this information, but you have the ability to have a very rich user interface. And you can respond to these questions with charts that you're coming up and that you're extracting from these documents. So you're able to not only have text-based responses, but also these images. So now we're going to do one more example as well, and we're going to have to summarize some data from a table, right? So we're asking about the key profitability indicators, which we summarize that information for you right here. We go into the Microsoft document, and then we pull up this large table that has a bunch of different information, and the VA needed to actually understand, all right, I need the profitability information, and how can I provide that back to the user in a contextual manner very seamlessly? right? So this is our knowledge AI, where we are connected to a backend data source and able to answer very, very seamlessly, summarizing this information, providing it back in a very conversational way, maintaining context, and really just stepping the whole game up to a new level.
Nice, nice. And I think what's crucial there is that, one, yes, you're using large language models to understand the user's kind of request. You're using it to summarize the documents and extract the relevant parts, but crucially, from a transparency perspective, you're linking back to the document. And that's like, for example, if anyone's used ChatGPT, you don't get that with ChatGPT. It just generates a response and that's that. And I think that as we kind of move forward and we start to use these large language models more in kind of customer facing, public domain kind of experiences, having that transparency element to it is going to be absolutely key, so you can reference where that information is coming from, and a business is going to be able to stand by it, a user is going to be able to trust it, and I think that's really, really beneficial. So that was really great. We have got some more questions, and we've got over 20 questions here, and I really do want to get to some of them at the end, because there's some really good ones in there. So we've got 2 more demos left. Let's show these last 2 features, and then we'll jump into some questions, because I know that people are seemingly very inspired so far. So yeah, definitely looking forward to it. So let's move on to this insights, Prasanna. What are we looking at here?
Yeah, so we saw design time and runtime. So we'll show how we are actually using LLMs to improve the post deployment, when the bot is deployed for users, how we can actually improve the insight. How we can leverage LLMs to kind of get better insights, and also from transcripts, how we can actually recognize new intents so that we can add it to the bot. So that's where also we've used LLM. So
Awesome.
Nick.
All right. Yeah. So what we're going to do here is show how we do intent discovery based on a transcript. So the first thing that we're going to do, you upload the transcript and you can come in and see all of the different conversations that have happened. And these transcripts don't need to be, structured in any way. It's just the raw transcript, where we're then going to extract the intents. And once the intents are extracted, what we can do is identify potential new use cases to add to our virtual assistant. So we see these new extracted intents, and what we're able to do is identify which utterances we want to add to either a brand new intent or to retrain an intent that has already been created. So we can do this for both a dialogue task and an FAQ. So if I didn't have a card not working intent before, I can go and add that and create that in the dialogue task. Over here on our conversation insights, we see a heat map of all of the different intents that we have. And what we can do is go into one of these, like our failed transfer intent, and we can see all of the different utterances that have been classified into a failed transfer. We can also include another intent, and we see here that some of the examples about a failed transfer have been incorrectly classified as beneficiary not allowed. So what we can do because of this is we can select these 4 utterances, and we can actually add this to the training data for the failed transfer. So we'll go through that flow right now, but this is massively, massively important. And the thing that I want everybody to know is that this is how we improve the virtual assistant experience over time. We're able to take things that the VA might have been confused about before, retrain it, so it's getting smarter over time. It's absolutely awesome to see this, and I will turn it back over to you, Kane and Prasanna.
Nice. Can you shine a little light in terms of what is the LLM doing in that instance?
So in terms of analyzing the transcripts, so we are leveraging LLM to kind of discover new intents from the transcripts, understand, because it has the better, you don't have to provide new training, so it already has the training, right? So it can understand the transcript and give you the intents.
Nice. Very good. And finally, the last feature, it's all of this kind of that we've been talking about here, both on the design time and on the kind of runtime, is all very good, because ultimately the creators are creating experiences that are going to hit customers on the front end. Customers are interacting with these assistants that are going to help them resolve their issues. But there is always going to be, I believe, the requirement for humans to be involved, humans in the loop. And so let's talk about this agent assist kind of feature then. How are you kind of implementing these large language models to help agents in their conversations with customers?
Yeah, so here, the LLMs are helping, as part of the virtual assistant, is helping to identify the next best action based on the conversation that is happening for the agent. And, obviously the virtual agent is also connected with the backend, so it can do the fulfillment. It can actually make an API call and give the response to the user. But while giving the
I think we might have lost Prasanna there, have we?
user interactions.
He's back.
Oh.
Sorry, we lost you a little for a second there, Prasanna.
Oh, sorry about that.
No, you're back now. It's all good. It's all good. Carry on.
All right. Okay. So LLMs can also help the agents to create a more empathetic response based on the user's context. And once the call is complete, it can even generate a post-call summarization, thus by saving the agent's time. Also, on top of that, LLMs are used in terms of generating the insights from the agent and user conversations, so that the contact center can better assess the customer sentiment, agent sentiment, and product sentiment, and things like that, and improve that overall performance.
Awesome. Yeah, so let's jump right into it. In this scenario, I'm going to be playing the role of a contact center agent, and we see that somebody's coming into the queue and they're going to have some sort of question. So automatically the LLM is going to generate some potential welcome responses to the user. And we see that the user wants to change their payment due date, and automatically the LLM's able to pull up the dialogue task and actually able to run it with the agent side by side. So you can automate this part of the conversation, this whole flow from start to finish, if the LLM and if the virtual assistant understands what you are using and you have a dialogue task built for this. And now this is actually a really important thing to bring up, is the user responded that things pile up and I get crammed up during the month. And can you change it to 5? So this means that the user's probably, got a lot going on. So we want to provide an empathetic response. So we say that we understand that it's difficult to manage these payments, and we're able to provide that empathy so that we can really provide the next level of conversational customer experience. We're going to finish out this flow, go through and help the user. And then what we can do is also see that the user has another question. And here, the virtual assistant using the LLM, it's connected to a knowledge base as well. And it's actually able to pull up that FAQ and provide that response right back to the user. So not only are you driving agent efficiency and agent experience, but you're also developing the next level of customer experience as well. So after all of this, we're going to go through and see if there's anything else that we can help the user with. And once the conversation's over, this is wonderful. We can see that we had this entire conversation. The user doesn't need anything else. So we're going to end the conversation, and the entire wrap-up notes are summarized automatically and put in there so that you can save it into your CRM. So we're driving massive efficiency through the contact center, really elevating the agent and customer experience. And I will turn it back over to you, Kane and Prasanna.
Wicked. That is what I like about that, is that a lot of the agent assist examples that you've seen in all kinds of use cases that use agent assist is all about kind of like next best actions. What they all stop short of, which I think is a limitation on some part, is they stop short of actually helping the agent fulfill the transaction, which is what is kind of demonstrated there. And I think that's really where the value is. Obviously, it will help being able to do next best actions, being able to prompt agents. It helps with getting them onboarded quicker and reduces training time, makes their jobs easier and stuff like that, which is all great. But when it comes down to like brass tacks, helping agents actually get stuff done, consolidating the myriad of systems that they have to engage with and use, and just sticking it all in a conversational interface and making it. Also, what's interesting there is that normally a conversational interface requires you to type to it or speak to it, but obviously an agent is on the phone, so they're busy. So keeping that UI minimal and just allowing them to click buttons to get on with tasks, I think is great. Fantastic examples. I don't know, Prasanna, if you've got any other kind of observations to share on that one.
No, I think all the LLMs features that we talked about in terms of to be able to get answers from knowledge bases and things like that, those directly translate to improving the overall agent performance as well.
Definitely. I said we'll get to some questions. We've got 2 minutes before the top of the hour. If everyone's cool, if you've got a little bit more time, then it would be good to get through some of these questions because some of them are really relevant. There's a lot coming through LinkedIn. We've got a lot here in Zoom. So we'll start first of all with one that is regarding availability. So are these features that we've just shown today, are they available now? Are they in beta? Are they kind of coming soon? Like, what's the status of these features in the Core AI platform today, Raj?
So
Yeah, I mean, right now we have the zero shot and few shot models already in GA, and some of these features are also already in GA. The remainder, most of the rest of them that you just saw, are all coming out in a couple of weeks' time in the next version of our platform in GA, not in beta, and will be fully available to anybody to sign up on our website and start using them.
Nice. How does the cost work for this? We've got a question here. It's an anonymous question, so I can't shout out the person who asked it. But how do you pay for this stuff? Is this wrapped into the Core AI licensing? Do you pay these LLM providers direct? And how does it work? Is it per conversation, per API call? Like how does all that stuff work?
Yeah. So we've wrapped it into our pricing, to the market. So as you saw, it's an orchestration of what you do in terms of building the virtual assistant and using the LLMs at various points in time, both at design time and at runtime. So you have a choice. You can pay the LLMs directly by putting in your API key, if you will, basically, or you can use it from within what we are paying the LLMs as required. And remember, when many times we're not even paying any LLM because we're using open source LLMs as required for different tasks, basically. So it's a choice for customers, whether they want to have a direct relationship or go through the relationship we have. All the data, all the conversations are stored in the Core AI platform. So those are not stored at OpenAI. So OpenAI, if you choose OpenAI as one of the LLMs for your particular use case, only get what we send them and what they respond back with. And even the agreement we have with OpenAI as well as with Microsoft protects that information, and they cannot use it for further training of their own models, essentially. So this is from an enterprise perspective, we're only sending very limited information, which is meaningless, because they don't have the full context of what we're building on the Core AI platform. And that limited information also cannot be used for any further training anyway. And you can pay them directly or you can pay them through us.
Nice. That was one of the other questions. What happens to the data? So thanks for clarifying that one. There's a couple of questions coming through. Marcelo's got one, and a couple of other people I've seen on LinkedIn have asked the same thing. What do you do about language support, and are these LLMs helpful in that respect? I don't know if you can share a little bit in terms of is it possible to create kind of multilingual assistance with this, or how does it work from a kind of being able to cater for multiple language perspective?
Yeah, so
that's one for you, Prasanna. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, so from a generative, all the features that we have shown in terms of the design time features are all supported for multilingual as well. We haven't enabled it yet. We will be adding in the next few weeks for the other languages. Also, the few shot and zero shot that we shown. Also, I mean, we do have. We have taken a language by language because we are validating which LLM is better in terms of the open source LLMs and fine tuning them per language and all that. But yes, I mean, we do have support for each of these, and we have a roadmap of rolling it out for each of the languages.
Yeah, out of the box, Kane, we support 120 languages anyway in the XO platform. And, much of these LLMs are being used at design time. So we don't expect the LLM to provide, the message responses or whatever in the appropriate language. So there are 3 different ways by which we support languages. One is with a multi-language model that we built into the Core.ai XO platform. The other one is through a curated model where you actually do the translations, manually, so that you have the most accurate responses coming back from the bot. And the third one is through a translation model. So using the combination of those 3 and using LLMs during design time, we can support pretty much every language that's out there.
Nice. In terms of the creation of these things, what skills, this is another anonymous one again, apologies, I can't give you a shout out, but what skills are required to be able to do this? I mean, it seems to me anyway, seeing those demos, it would be helpful to understand natural language processing and conversation design and stuff like that, but it looks as though it's democratizing a lot of this activity. So I'd be curious to learn whether you've had a good think or through your experience, what skills are needed to be able to utilize this technology with these LLMs. And then a second question, which is related, is what is it doing for deployment times?
Yeah, so the skills that are required are no different from what were required before, except there's less work to be done. So domain expertise. So if I'm building a banking bot, I need to know the banking domain. And the LLMs may generate some use cases, may generate some sample dialogues, but I need to be a product manager to understand how that would work for my bank, for that matter. And secondly, the business rules that you input into it, like in that pizza ordering case, you can only order 3 pizzas, and these medium pizzas have only 2 toppings. Those are again business rules that come from typically a product manager type of individual, basically, or a business analyst. Much of the work that used to be needed to train the bot to come up with utterances, come up with synonyms and patterns and that sort of thing goes away to a large extent. But you need to be able to at least look at the generated training data and the generated test data to see if it is appropriate, in your particular use case. So again, domain expertise is important, in being able to do that. And lastly, in terms of the LLMs generating these phrases, that go back to the user, and empathetic phrases, the ability to pass the right context is important to the LLM, through the tooling that we provide. So generally speaking, product managers, business analysts are the primary users. To a secondary extent, you may have some conversation designers who would adjust the conversation to suit a particular enterprise or a particular use case. And lastly, it is general testers. Of course, you need people who know their backend APIs to put in the backend APIs at the right nodes, to be able to pull data or push data into backend systems, basically. So overall, I think the amount of work that one would have had to do before we started using these LLMs to now, I think the amount of work gets cut down anywhere between 30% to 70%, depending on how vast your scope is. So you can get these bots up and running very, very quickly. You could have a 80-20 rule that the 20 use cases that get you 80% of your volume can be up and running within weeks, with the use of LLMs, and then handle the remaining use cases over time.
Very good. I think that what's really interesting here is I've been reading this book here. I don't know if you've seen it before, Crossing the Chasm, which Jeffrey Moore, so the whole kind of like technology adoption bell curve that everyone's kind of familiar with kind of came from Jeffrey Moore, which is, everything begins with the innovators, and then it moves to the kind of, the early adopters, and then the early majority, and then the late majority. And I'm reading this and I'm thinking conversational, and I was talking to our CTO as well the other day, saying that the conversational AI adoption in enterprises is kind of in that chasm. The early adopters have kind of getting on with it. And what's missing is something that's really going to kick the rest of the market and the rest of the world into embracing conversational AI and getting started with it. And when I'm seeing these examples, I look at Knowledge AI, and it's like, all you need to do is just give it your data and let the language models do the work. And it's a real kind of a barrier to adoption is kind of just being brought down. And then you look at the creation side and you think, well, as I mentioned, the voice use case, designing dialogue and handling all these kind of like twists and turns is a very laborious job. It can take a very skilled person weeks and months to design and build a very effective conversation. That gets cut down, and so you're relying less on that. So there's another barrier that's come down. I just kind of think to myself that the more of this stuff you can put into the hands of ordinary people, the quicker and easier it is to get adoption. and the more businesses will ultimately that end up benefiting, and ultimately the more customers end up benefiting. I'd love to end basically, Raj, with your thoughts on that. Like, is that what you would think that these tools are for, is to really break down those barriers to adoption, to open the floodgates to any business to be able to utilize this really powerful technology to crack on and really improve the way they do things and their customer experience?
Yes, I mean, absolutely. I think adoption is going to increase substantially. Already we are seeing that within our customer base and our prospect base, this has become a board level conversation and not a department level conversation. The board members are asking their CEOs, what are you doing in this space? And there's more interest, more excitement about it. But one thing is important to remember, and this is very, very important. In all that we've shown you today, we've smartly taken the capabilities of LLMs and melded it with our platform to be able to manage that conversation effectively to achieve a certain outcome. And that combination is what brings value to an enterprise. Basically, LLMs on their own are just raw models that can do something, but they can't do what you want, basically. And it's important to keep that in mind. The fine-tuning on top of a raw LLM is the key to success. And that fine-tuning we do on a use case by use case. As you use our tool to be able to build your bot, you're actually behind the scene, we're creating a fine-tuned LLM. Now, the LLMs themselves are also going to change. There's weekly releases of GPT 3.5, GPT 4 will come out. At some point, Google is going to release Lambda, basically, which comes with its own capabilities. So when you think about the stack, at the bottom of the stack, you're going to have these proprietary LLMs or open source LLMs that are going to develop more features and capabilities over a period of time. And then on top of that, you have to create your own enterprise LLM for different use cases, which take enterprise data, enterprise rules, and your designs into consideration to use the underlying LLMs as you go forward. And then above that is your conversational layer, essentially. So the stack has changed. The stack used to be that you have blank slate models, like a Kane model or a transformer model, where you had to provide all the training. Now you have these trained models at the bottom, and then your objective is to create that enterprise LLM in the middle, and then the conversation layer on top, basically. So that gives you more control as an enterprise about how the LLMs behave in the real world, and they don't hallucinate and they don't provide wrong responses. So the combination of that is the key, and that's what we've attempted to do here. And there's much more to come. We have a lot more ideas. There are things in the roadmap which will make this thing much more easy to adopt over a period of time.
Nice. Nice. That's very good. Very good. Well, thank you for joining me, guys. And what I would say as well is that thanks for showing behind the curtain and showing what's what, because I think there's a lot of confusion in general in this industry, and everyone's talking about large language models, and everyone's wondering what the impact is going to be for designers, creatives, developers, businesses that use this technology on ultimately. And I think that a lot of it is just kind of talk and headlines, basically. And so to kind of come along and to show the actual platform, show how these features actually work, and give us a real insight behind the scenes in terms of what's coming up and how it practically is going to be used in reality, I think is really, really valuable to give people a real clear of what actually is this stuff, and how does it actually impact how we're going to do things. So thank you very much for joining us and for sharing these features, and thank everyone for joining as well. I would definitely encourage you to go to core.ai, KORE.ai. If you want to find out more, you can actually register and get access to the platform for free. Just create an account and away you go. And I'm sure that the team, Prasanna and the team, will welcome a demo if you really want to kind of get under the hood and learn a little bit more about how it can be used for your specific business use cases. So in the email that we'll send you all following this, we'll stick those links in there, and I would definitely encourage you to reach out and to see for yourself, basically, how this technology is. I am absolutely convinced. I've been convinced for the last 6 years, and I'm still as convinced today as I was then, that this technology is transformative. It is absolutely fundamentally going to change the way that businesses operate. It's going to reimagine customer experience. It's going to reset customer expectations. And 90% of the business, 90% of the data that it's in most businesses is unstructured. The only way you're going to be able to structure that, make it machine readable and make it usable for the business and for your customers is to use this kind of technology. And so the value that is wrapped in this stuff is not even anywhere near to being scratched the surface of. And so I would definitely recommend that you go to Core AI, check it out. And if you are not subscribed to VUX World, go to vux.world/subscribe to get all of our insights every single week, our newsletters, our articles, and exclusive webinars like this. We've got plenty more coming with Core AI over the course of this year. And so keep an eye out for that. Raj, Nick, Prasanna, thank you so much for joining me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you, Kane. It was awesome.
Yeah.
And thank you all for joining us. It's been really, really good. Hopefully you've got something from it. I'm sure you did, because if I got something from it, which I definitely did, then I'm confident you will have as well. So we'll see you on the next one. Thank you again.